Hey, it's Alan Berg. Before we get into this episode, I'm starting something called Ask Me Anything. That's right. You submit your questions and they could become an entire episode or something that I answer at the end of an episode. To submit your questions, look for the red button at podcast.alanberg.com. That's right, podcast.alanberg.com. Click on the red button, submit your question, and maybe you'll hear it here on the podcast. Thanks. Are you still making the phone number field required on your contact forms? Listen to this episode. You might change your mind. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, author, sales trainer, website reviewer, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. This is something that comes up all the time when I'm consulting with vendors just like you, and it's a bone of contention. And then the reason it is because I know that you want the contact form to have the phone number because you, and maybe not all of you, but many of you would prefer to talk on the phone with your couples. You can get that conversation going in real time, and that's great, except that there is ample evidence that this is not a good idea. I was doing some research today, and as I've been doing a lot lately, me and ChatGPT have been talking to one another. Because I do, when I go in, I say good morning or good afternoon or whatever, and I talk to it like a person. And that's why you might have heard me say either here or at a Wedding MBA or something, that people over 45 tend to get better results from AI because we give it better instructions. And my assistant, who's 21, said, yeah, I give it 8 words and you give it 2 paragraphs. And that's kind of what happens here. So I did a little bit of research because I'm working on a project with someone, and I noticed that the form field for phone number was required. And I said, why? And they said, well, the client wants that. I said, well, does the client realize that they're getting fewer inquiries because of it? And they said, well, probably not. So I did a little bit of research. And according to HubSpot, it said that reducing the number of form fields from 4 to 3, and think about how many of you have way more than 4 on them, increased conversion rates by 50%. Think about that. Going from 4 to 3 increased by 50%. According to a Conversion XL research, simplifying forms can lead to a 160% increase in form submissions. And then I talked specifically about phone numbers and what happens with the phone numbers. Well, the first thing is you have to understand that Gen Y is phone averse and Gen Z is even more phone averse. So if you're requiring a phone field, you're already adding a significant amount of friction. So here's a couple of things. The HubSpot study said that making the phone number field required can decrease form submissions by up to 37%. These are people who never fill out the form because the phone field is required. So think about that. You can't see when someone goes to your website, sees the form, sees that the phone field is required, and leaves. That abandonment of that form, or maybe not even starting because they see that's there. They're saying by up to 37%. And then this was a marketing experiments case study. When the phone field was optional, conversions increased by 42% compared to when it was required. You want to get more people who already have seen your photos, maybe watched your videos, read reviews, seen what you've written on your website, and fill out your contact form. Make the phone field optional. You've probably heard Mark Chapman here on the podcast, and he said that when they're doing social ads, because that's his business, the I Do Society, that putting in the phone field, put your phone number if you prefer texting. And they saw, I think it was an 80% increase in people giving the phone number because now you're telling them you're going to text. Now, a study by Salesforce said that 77% of consumers prefer communication via email over phone calls. Now, I've said this before, you can ask for the call later or put it into a PS. So PS, if you'd like to arrange a phone call, or if you're a venue, PS, if you'd like to arrange a tour, click here if you're using a calendar app or something like that. And then just many, many other ones here. The Baymard Institute Usability Insights. They observed that optional phone fields reduce form abandonment rates, particularly among younger audiences, Gen Z and millennials. So making the phone field optional stops people from abandoning your form. So you have to balance this between getting more, right, and thinking that the phone number, giving the phone number makes it better. Well, if you make it optional and they give you the phone number, they're giving you permission to use it. So that's really, let them tell you that they want to use it and get more people to actually fill out the form. And then I talked about submission rates. I put in here specifically for Gen Y and Gen Z, right? 2023 Form Stack study found that forms with a required phone number field saw a 45% lower completion rate, specifically among Gen Y and Gen Z, compared to when it was optional. So again, you don't see this because they never filled out the form in the first place. So making that form field optional could actually get you better leads, because just because someone doesn't want to give you the phone number doesn't mean they're not a good lead. It just means that that's not their preferred way of communicating, and they're not even giving you a chance. So let's start with that. And then Salesforce said that 76% of millennials, 83% of Gen Z strongly prefer digital communication, email, text, or chat over phone calls. A Twilio survey, Gen Z prefers texting 64% over phone calls, as 20% for phone calls. Texting, they prefer 64% versus phone calls at 20%. The perception of requiring a phone number, right? A Forrester research study in 2022 found that the phone number being required was perceived by Gen Z as being invasive by 68%. Invasive, listen to that word, and moderately invasive by 55% of millennials. So if you are requiring a phone number on your contact form, you are missing out on good inquiries. They don't want to talk to you on the phone. That does not make them a bad inquiry. It just means they're not ready for that yet, because Gen Y will get on the phone if they feel it's necessary. Them, not you. Gen Z probably will at some point as well, and they will come in for a tour for your venue as well. You just can't rush that because that adds too much friction. Some more things, abandonment rates. The Baymard Institute study in 2023, requiring a phone number led to a 27% higher form abandonment, specifically among Gen Z, and 21% higher for Gen Y. So once again, requiring that phone number, people are looking at your form and going away and saying, no, I'm not going to fill it out because I don't want you to call me. That's, again, a high commitment there. It's also a control issue, control and autonomy. Gen Z in particular values control over how and when they communicate. So having a required phone number is losing control, because now you're able to call them whether they want you to or not. So make it optional. Give them alternatives of how to communicate that are digital. Follow and pay attention to all of those. If somebody messages you on Instagram or on TikTok or on The Knot or on Wedding Wire or on Facebook or someplace else, you better respond. If they inquire through your website, you better respond. I know you've heard me say this, but 17% of the over 500 companies that we've secret shopped between last year and this year never replied at all. You're just throwing money out the window. But you're also throwing out the window money by making the phone number field required, because do you see these abandonment numbers on here? I mean, this is crazy that's on here. You can go look at the transcript of this. You'll see some of those stats that are there, because everything I quoted will be in the transcript. It's on my website at podcast.allenberg.com, or whatever your platform is on Apple Podcast or Spotify or YouTube or whatever. The transcripts should be there as well. So if you're just make this one change, just try it out and see what happens. Engagement season is in full force now. Change the phone number from required to optional. If you're using texting, try the wording that Mark Chapman said. Put your phone number if you prefer texting, right? I have that on my fields as well. And see what happens, and see if you actually get more inquiries. And yes, you might have to have some more of those conversations digitally first, and then you can eventually convert them to a phone, a Zoom, or an in-person once you've earned their trust by meeting them where they are. So I know it might be uncomfortable, but you know what? It takes about, what do they say, 30 days or 60 days for something to become a new habit. Once you get comfortable with that, you, like so many people that have listened to this and have told me they've written business through texting, through Facebook Messenger, through email, through WhatsApp, through digital things. I know I've done it, and I know you can too. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel and post a review on your chosen platform, Apple Podcasts or whichever one. If you have any questions about anything in this episode or any of my episodes, email me directly at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com or visit my website, alanberg.com, alanberg.com. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests that you'd like to see, please again, email me or visit my website. Thanks for listening.